exciting.
I'm so glad you brought up the Science Meets Parliament week and particularly the dinner. And I know I saw you there, but I was sat with one of the superstars of SEM, Dr. Ronica Power. What an extraordinary woman she is. So I suppose I wanted to ask you then that I know that ANSTO is one of the great champions of increasing the involvement of women in their organisation and science and technology more broadly. Do you think you could tell us, please, how ANSTO is addressing the issue of gender equality and diversity in the workplace?
When the discussion started in Australia about joining with the Athena Swans program in the UK, I took the opportunity ahead of the meeting that took place in Australia to visit the research unit in the UK that developed the thinking behind Athena Swan, because to me it was tremendously important to understand what had happened in that setting as we started to think about it in Australia. ANSTO was invited to the first meeting, which was chaired by Brian Schmidt and other colleagues from the sector. And I sent one of our senior managers and one of our emerging women leaders in the organisation to attend that meeting. When I was briefed on the day following the meeting, I was moved to write to Professor Schmidt to say that ANSTO would like to participate in the first pilot of SAGE. When I hadn't heard early in January from him, I phoned him up and he said, we were only expecting to get going in March, but you're the first in the queue. So this is, I think, important that our organisations are absolutely committed to gender equity, that the women in science have career pathways that are much more predictable than they were in the past, and that they are able to be afforded opportunities to have all of the richness of childbearing and rearing in partnership with their partners, but without any negative impact on their careers. So ANSTO is indeed a member of the SAGE process, Science and Gender, Science Australia for Gender Equality. We are completing our first submission for a bronze award that will go in later in March. It's been a wonderful journey just understanding the things that are going well in ANSTO, but also the things that are not going so well. And I think we all have to reflect on some of the blockages that you just don't see until you think about it differently. So I think that the SAGE process has got off to an excellent start. I've attended the Sydney meeting and the Brisbane meeting, the 2 annual meetings that have been held so far. And I find the energy that it creates and the commitments and the thinking that it generates is absolutely important. So we will remain committed to the science and gender equity process in Australia. But I must say that in my executive, we've been working over time to get a better gender balance in the executive. And I now am pleased to say that there are 3 women on ANSTO's executive. And the 3 women who are on ANSTO's executive command 80% of the resources of ANSTO, because the head of our Nuclear Science, Technology and Landmark Infrastructure Group, Dr. Simone Richter, Jane Senior, who runs our businesses, and Pamela Naidu, who has recently been appointed as the Group Executive for Nuclear Operations, command a very substantial proportion of ANSTO's activities. This is very exciting for us, because at the top end of a historically male-dominated nuclear industry in Australia, we now have 3 incredibly talented women on the executive of ANSTO.
That's very encouraging. Thank you, Dr. Patterson, and thank you for your contribution to the Science Meets Parliament Week. It was terrific.